I let go of so much and I gave it to him. And no amount of I'm sorry's will ever undo it. Hurt people hurt people.
Justin Baldoni just pulled Blake Lively apart after she tried to harm his name with her manipulative lies and phony charges.
This isn't going to end well for you, Blake. Sorry.
Sorry. He made it apparent that he is a man of dignity. Someone who won't sit back and watch females like Blake play their miserable Hollywood games to harm innocent individuals.
She's a Me Too victim there. That's absurd.
Blake Lively truly felt she could pull an Amber Heard 2.0 and get away with it. She believed she could harm Justin Baldoni's entire career by flinging about some bogus harassment claims, expecting Hollywood to blindly take her side because, well, she's Blake Lively.
Justin Baldoni is finally speaking about how exhausted he is from the year of emotional stress dealing with It Ends With Us.
She strutted in, assuming Justin would crack under pressure, that he'd fold like a flimsy tent and just deliver her the prize on a silver platter. $250 million. That's how much she sued him for, convinced she could silence him and position herself as some innocent victim. What a bad error.
I don't like her. She seems like a bully. She was such a high-maintenance diva bully brat.
Justin Baldoni didn't simply fight back. He altered the entire script on her. He countersued her for $400 million, unexpectedly turning the tables. In one fast action, Blake switched from attacker to full-on damage control mode.
His holidays ruined, and now his whole career is attempted to be ruined by Blake and the lawsuit. So I can only imagine if he was this tough before it all dropped, imagine how much tougher it was after.
And guess what? It's not operating. Hollywood, the people, even the same journalists who used to drool over her, are all turning against her. They're seeing through her lies. The illusion is shattering, and now she's running, desperate to hang on to whatever shards of credibility she has left.
Actor-director Justin Baldoni is now suing his former co-star Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds, seeking more than $400 million in damages, accusing them of defamation and extortion.
And let's be honest, this is simply the beginning of her breakdown. Her job is failing, her money in peril, her reputation beyond saving, and Justin Baldoni is making sure she never recovers. Blake believed she had authority. She thought she could control the narrative. But the moment she stepped into that courtroom, reality smacked her like a truck. She wasn't prepared for what was about to happen.
I told them that I was exhausted, that I haven't given myself time to recover or time to heal. I had an intense year.
She wasn't expecting for Justin Baldoni to thoroughly crush her case in under 90 minutes. That's right, 90 minutes is all it took for her argument to start collapsing like an old Hollywood popcorn bucket.
Parties, of course, meeting for the first time in court today. It was about a 90-minute hearing.
She assumed she had the upper hand, but no. She came into a courtroom utterly helpless, going up against a legal team that was not here to play games. And within an hour and a half, she was already taking L's left and right. Every motion. Her team filed, denied. One after another, like a sharp punch in the face. Not one, not two, but every single one of her legal attempts to shape the narrative were dumped straight in the garbage.
He told us that Justin Baldoni denied those claims of sexual harassment and only tried to appease Blake Lively because she was such a high-maintenance diva bully brat. He had to bend over backwards just to get her to shut up and complete the film.
Oh, and her feeble attempt to muzzle Justin's legal team? Yeah, that got shut down too. She was attempting to hush him, frantic to keep the truth from getting out. She obviously assumed she could force the court into providing her special treatment, merely because she's an A-list actress. She was wrong.
I had anxiety because I'm not feeling like my full self. And yet I came today despite, no sleep and not feeling great and, all of the barriers.
The judge laughed her out of the room and refused to grant the gag order, which means Justin's lawyer, Brian Fredman, now has complete freedom to expose every single one of her falsehoods.
None of it was just due to the fact that she seems like a rather shitty person.
Blake's legal team were crushed so brutally, they seemed like a bunch of foolish interns on their first day at a law firm. They had no counter-arguments, no defense, just blank faces and panicked stammering as they labored through their bad case. It was practically humiliating to witness. Every time they tried to make a point, it looked like they were digging themselves into a deeper hole, seeking around nervously for a way out, but finding none. Meanwhile, Fredman was unrelenting. He took their argument apart like a terrible movie script that should have never made it past the first draft. Every argument they provided was received with a vicious demolition, leaving them groping for words. The courtroom was dead silent but for Fredman's angry statements and the sound of their credibility eroding. By the time it was done, Blake's legal team wasn't merely defeated, they were thoroughly humiliated.
She decided to blame him, and boy, did she open up a hornet's nest and learn, be careful what you wish for, because now you've got the fight you asked for and you're not winning it.
She felt her Hollywood stardom would save her, that her influence would somehow make the court bend down to her. She believed her power, her connections, and her reputation alone would be enough to shift the scales in her favor. But reality hit her hard. Instead of coming in like a queen and striding out victorious, she found herself dreadfully humiliated. Right there, in front of the court, in front of the media, in front of a large audience tracking her every move, she faced a severe legal takedown. The courtroom wasn't a place for celebrity privilege. It was a fight, and she was losing miserably. What she considered to be a moment of control swiftly degenerated into a nightmare. It was a legal bloodbath, public, brutal, and absolutely ruthless. Every argument she made collapsed, and with every passing second, it became apparent that no amount of Hollywood power could save her now.
He is, his agent is Ari Emanuel. He's a powerful Hollywood guy, and we all respond to Hollywood power. And there's a hypocrisy and a fraudulence there that the public is picking up on. And so that's really interesting now.
But honestly, are we even surprised? Blake Lively has been on a power trip for years, and this case was only the latest example of her overstepping and failing horribly. This lady actually believed she could take Justin Baldwin's movie, erase him from his own production, and claim that she was the genius behind it all. She wanted full control, as if she was the mastermind tugging all the threads, but things didn't go as planned. The second she tried to force Justin out, people started suspecting her actual motives. Did she honestly assume no one would notice? The industry isn't blind, and neither are the fans. Her effort at seizing power totally failed, leaving her with nothing but embarrassment. This isn't the first time she's tried to manipulate a situation for her own advantage, and at this point, it's getting harder and harder for people to ignore.
A lot of material success and a lot of emotional stress. It's very hard on me and my family.
Let's discuss about how she tried to grab It Ends With Us directly out of Justin's hands. The man spent 5 full years developing this picture, pouring his heart, soul, and energy into it. Every single detail was methodically crafted by him, each scene, every word, and the overarching theme of the movie. It was his passion project, one he developed from the bottom up, and then in walks Blake Lively, assuming she somehow knows more than the person who truly made the stupid movie. She didn't merely act in it, she took over. She pushed script rewrites, drastically changing the essential essence of the narrative. She pushed herself into director-level decisions, acting in areas where she had no business. And if that wasn't enough, she even had the arrogance to ask Final Cut clearance, like she was Martin Scorsese or another Hollywood giant who had earned that privilege.
That Justin Baldoni, ultimately, by the time they got to the premiere, was mandated by Blake Lively to spend the night in the basement, away from his co-stars, and didn't even get to see the final cut of his own movie because Blake Lively insisted that she be the one to approve it until he watched it on the screen with his editors.
Final Cut approval. Who does she think she is? She was hired to act, not take over the entire production. But no, that wasn't enough for her. She had to shove Justin aside and make sure everything revolved around her. And the absolute worst part, she literally banned Justin from properly attending his own movie premiere. Let that sink in. The man who put years of work into this project, the person responsible for bringing it to life, was forced to stay in a basement while Blake pranced around like Hollywood royalty. Can you imagine? The one person who should have been celebrated that night was treated like an outsider in his own creation. And she didn't just stop there. She made sure everyone knew that this was her moment, her spotlight, as if the entire industry revolved around her and no one else.
Film was steamrolled by Blake, which just showed their inexperience as producers. And I say that with all respect. they got completely controlled and taken over by Blake.
She didn't even let him watch the final cut of the movie until it was much too late. By the time he grasped what had transpired, everything was already set in stone, and there was nothing he could do about it. She made sure she had total and absolute control over every single detail of the production, as if she was the director, the producer, and the star all rolled into one. Every option had to go through her, and she wasn't prepared to compromise on anything. She wanted all the power, all the influence, and all the authority over how the movie turned out. But at the same time, she wasn't willing to take on any of the duties that came with it. If things went wrong, she wasn't going to be the one to take the fall. She sought authority, but she refused to be held accountable.
Here's where he goes into why he made the film.
I haven't talked about this a lot because I want to be very mindful in the conversation around this movie to not take the emphasis off of what is happening to women at alarming rates.
Absolutely.
And you'd think after all that, she'd at least make sure the movie was actually about what it was meant to be about, right? Nope. Instead of properly pushing the film's message about domestic violence awareness and focusing attention on such an important problem, she utterly distorted the plot to serve her own agenda. Rather of exploiting her position to highlight the struggles of survivors or bring attention to real-life situations, she turned the entire affair into a glorified PR gimmick. It wasn't about increasing awareness at all. It was all about her. She made sure the spotlight was on herself and, of course, her commercial operations. Instead of leveraging the occasion to promote crucial debates or push for true change, she hijacked the film and turned it into a full-scale commercial campaign. Suddenly, a project that could have been big and powerful was little more than an extended infomercial for her own brand. And guess what? It didn't end there. While she was at it, she also made sure to pitch Ryan Reynolds' gin business whenever she could, as if that had anything to do with the film's claimed theme. What could have been a captivating, eye-opening movie about real-life difficulties became little more than a commercial break dressed up as cinema. It was arrogant, shameless, and honestly, absolutely predictable. Because at the end of the day, she always makes sure she profits, no matter the cost.
She's basically saying that she does not want to sit down for a deposition with Brian Friedman. Like, I know that this girl grew up rich and privileged, but how rich we talking? You know what I'm saying? Because does she think she's like a princess that she can just be like, I don't like your lawyer?
Justin does a better job, in my opinion, of providing receipts and showing full context.
Absolutely. This wasn't about conveying a dramatic narrative. It wasn't about creative honesty. It was about Blake Lively making everything about herself again, and now she's suffering the consequence. The public isn't buying it anymore. Hollywood isn't buying it anymore. The judge sure as hell isn't buying it. She imagined she could take Justin Baldoni down, but instead, he's the one taking her entire organization apart piece by piece. And at this rate, there's no coming back for her. It's not just a short setback. This is full-blown devastation. The harm is irreversible. Her reputation, once perfect, is now in ruins, and there's nothing she can do to arrest the decline. I want to minimize as many little money streams as practical. She will be financially decimated. Her career? Dead. No studio will touch her with a 10-foot pole. Even the ones who earlier praised her are now maintaining their distance. Hollywood has a history of turning its back on individuals when the tide shifts, and for Blake Lively, that time has arrived. Her reputation has taken a major harm, and even her own fans, the ones who used to back her at every step, are now doubting everything. The betrayal they feel is apparent, and the retaliation is merely growing bigger. And the greatest part? Her lawsuit has backfired so dramatically that she will likely owe Justin millions extra in damages when this is all completed. This isn't merely a little legal issue. This isn't something she can recover from with a few PR gimmicks or carefully planned apologies. This is a career-ending tragedy. And the worst part? She marched directly into it, believing she could manipulate the situation to her advantage. But reality smacked her like a ton of bricks, and now she's left scrambling with nowhere to hide. Blake Lively imagined she could ruin Justin Baldoni, but now her career is in flames. The decline has begun, and there's no recovering it. Subscribe for the whole study of her demise.